Wolff admits that Mercedes aren't back yet. Since the start of the season, Mercedes have struggled to find a balance, or simply put, create that challenger for the 2022 championship, and are currently behind Red Bull and Ferrari in the constructors' title. Through ups and downs, they have managed to somehow find their footing amongst the leading teams on track, and at the last race weekend in Montreal, they secured a third and fourth place finish, which notes there could be a better chance for more victories. Despite the win, the team boss announced the team are yet to be as they are popularly known. Why do you think he has this sentiment, especially since Hamilton got a third-place finish in Montreal? Subscribe, ring the notification bell, and stay tuned as we explore the reason. After the challenging race in Azerbaijan, the Mercedes drivers openly expressed their displeasure on how porpoising had affected their race in the streets of Baku, and this prompted an FIA intervention to find a solution to the problem. After that, the team went into the Canadian GP in high spirits and were rewarded with a third and fourth place finish. The spectacular display in Montreal has raised a lot of interest and comments that the Silver Arrow drivers could deliver a different and wonderful performance on their home turf in the British GP. While this buzz goes on, the Mercedes team principal admits that the team isn't back yet, and there's probably more work to be done. Mercedes team boss Toto Wolff has agreed that the team's cars were performing better at the recent Canadian Grand Prix and is hopeful that the form can continue at the upcoming British GP. Through the last 10 laps of the Canadian Grand Prix, Lewis Hamilton and George Russell looked like they were in the mix with the leaders, with Hamilton almost keeping pace with the two cars ahead. At one stage it looked as if he might have been able to overtake Carlos Sainz, but the Britons soon started losing small amounts of time to the Ferrari ahead. There has been much discussion about how Mercedes appeared stronger at the event, and while Wolff has agreed that things were a little better, he believes that his team need to put in a lot more work for the drivers to find their rightful place among the leaders. Wolff said, "You can see at the hairpin they put in new asphalt, so we suffer less from the stiffness of the car, which is the main problem. But before the safety car came out at the end, we were actually quicker than Carlos Sainz and Max Verstappen. But you're picking out a few laps and saying, yeah, we're back. But I don't think that's the case here. We just need to keep working." Apparently, the team found a solution to the terrible bouncing of their car. So what was the setup that helped secure a podium in Canada? Although Hamilton didn't complete his long run in practice because the car was still bad as the team tried another experimental setup, using the driver's experience to assess the situation as Russell stayed with a more conventional trim. Combining the data from both setups led the team to increase the rear ride height and soften off the suspension to alleviate the bouncing. While Russell hadn't been as unhappy with his W13 in Canada's practice as Hamilton, he still found the revised setup an improvement, though he didn't see that as any sort of breakthrough. He said, "The porpoising wasn't that bad, but it's still smashing up and down on the ground just as we were in Baku. It's definitely less extreme just because of the nature of the circuit, the lower speed, but the overall inherent issues are far from being resolved. We've run high, we've run low. The performance hasn't improved or decreased, and the stiffness or the bottoming hasn't really changed. Even when you run high, you have different effects. When you run low, you have different effects. It's a really tricky situation to get on top of." Hamilton himself said about the setup during the Friday practice, "The potential is truly there if we can get the setup right, and I think that's been the most difficult thing this year, really trying to optimize the setup. The window for this car is much smaller than any other car we've experienced. We tried 2 different avenues on Friday, and the avenue I was down was dreadful. So we collated all the data we had and made drastic changes to the setup, and it was much nicer today. More in line with what we anticipated, and it was good. When you get a full race distance in, you find a lot of things out about the car and the relationship you have with the car and the data, etc. So there's a lot to take from today." Armed with the knowledge that qualifying was set to be wet and the race dry, Mercedes split their rear wing options. Russell was given a bigger rear wing to help with qualifying, with knowledge that the lower straight line speed would likely make things difficult in the dry of race day. Hamilton's wing choice was made in the full expectation of it being slower in qualifying but faster in the race. As it happened, Russell's brave but doomed attempt at using slicks as a dry line began to appear at the end of Q3, which made him start 4 places behind Hamilton. Clinching his first podium since Bahrain, Hamilton seemed happier in the W13 than he has of late, which came as bad news for Russell. The other good news was that the expected penalty of the bigger wing on Sunday didn't play out. The tailwind down the back straight and pit straight was strong enough not to make things too punishing. It also helped that by chance Russell was never in the position of trying to pass or prevent himself being passed. He could just take the lap time and tyre benefits without the downsides. Russell said, "The track grip was far greater than I expected. We took a bit of risk and we thought the track resetting after the rain yesterday, high degradation, the bigger wing would have been good. But with the change of wind direction, the grip was really strong today." In Montreal, the car performed much better than in the previous race at Baku, even though there are certain similarities in the texture of the two tracks. Mercedes believe there were two contributing factors that differentiated their performance. The first was that there were none of the fast, long-duration corners like those of turns 13, 14, 15 in Baku, which was where the W13 lost most of its lap time. While the car performed very well at Barcelona, a track with plenty of fast, long-duration corners, the tracks are smoothly surfaced, nothing like Baku. Montreal had several new sections of smooth tarmac laid out, and it was notable that the car seemed to respond well to those parts. Towards the end of the stints, Hamilton and Russell were able to set times within a couple of tenths of those being set by Max Verstappen's Red Bull and Carlos Sainz's Ferrari, who were battling for the lead. The high tyre degradation on the day and the hard pace Verstappen and Sainz were forcing on each other meant the Mercedes tyre performance was much better. Hamilton and Russell were not in wheel-to-wheel combat and could run their races at the most efficient pace, whereas Verstappen and Sainz were simply trying to be in front of the other. Russell said, "At the end, our race pace was definitely the closest it's been all season, so we'll take the positives, but the inherent performance is still far from where we want to be." In essence, the team raised the ride height of their car slightly to help with the porpoising that has plagued them all season so far, and this made the W13 a little more drivable in Canada. The team boss said, "We just need to develop the car in a different window that we had. We had it really low on the ground, but clearly that doesn't function, so I think we have development direction. We didn't get it right in many areas, but we own the problem and we need to fix it." Now there is hope for Mercedes that they'll be able to run the car low at the upcoming British Grand Prix so that they can be even more competitive, especially for Hamilton and Russell's home event. But Wolff remains cautious about getting too optimistic, particularly given that the team had previously looked stronger at the Spanish Grand Prix, only to have a more difficult weekend in Monaco 1 week later. Toto Wolff suggested, "If we're able to run the car low, then we can be competitive. But after Barcelona, we were cheering, 'We're back in the championship fight.' So let's see." If you enjoyed the video, like and share the video with your friends. Subscribe and ring the notifications bell so you don't miss out on more juicy videos coming your way.